This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu-Yuat. It's Wednesday, October 23rd. This is Africa 54. Botswana votes in what appears to be the first real challenge to the ruling party. Sudan's top financial officer speaks to VOA about reviving his country's economy. And a conversation with the producer and creative director of the hit animated TV series, The Adventures of Nkoza and Nankia. We begin our broadcast tonight in Botswana, where polls opened on Wednesday in what looks to be the first genuine challenge to a party that has dominated for more than 5 decades. The Southern African nation, with a population of 2.2 million, has more than 900,000 registered voters who will elect 57 National Assembly and 490 local government representatives. Anna Bevan reports.
Polls opened in Botswana on Wednesday in what is expected to be the first genuine challenge to the party that's ruled for more than 5 decades. Duma Boko, leader of the Umbrella for Democratic Change, is hoping to unseat President Mokgweetsi Masisi and his Botswana Democratic Party, which has won every election since independence from Britain in 1966. Whichever party wins will have to move swiftly to transform the economy. Boko has promised to do just that, as has Masisi.
Got to jolt this economy and do something unusual.
Since independence, the economy has grown at 8% a year to become one of Africa's most successful. But it now risks becoming unstuck because of an over-reliance on a single commodity: diamonds. The precious stone made up half of Botswana's GDP in the 1990s and has fallen to a fifth in 2018. And that's important for Botswana's voters, in a country with unemployment at 20% and stark inequalities.
I'm hoping that the candidate that will win will be able to come up with policies that will improve our lives, and the policies that will take Botswana to a better future.
Boko, who's backed by former President Ian Khama, says he will only accept a result if the election is free and credible, raising the prospect that a country that has only ever known one-sided elections could be heading for its first rancorous dispute over a tight result.
Anna Bevan of Reuters reporting. Now, hundreds of supporters of an Ethiopian ethnic activist and media entrepreneur gathered outside his house on Wednesday, hours after it was surrounded by police, following a warning by the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed against media owners fomenting unrest. At least 400 young men joined the protest at the house of Jagwe Mohammed in the capital, Addis Ababa, while around 24 police officers stood nearby. Demonstrations spread to other cities in Oromia, the region that was the center of protests that brought Abiy to power last year. Jagwe, who was born in Ethiopia but holds a U.S. passport, founded the Oromia Media Network, an independent television channel and news website. He has 1.75 million Facebook followers. In North Africa, Saied, a political outsider and retired law professor, was sworn in as Tunisian president on Wednesday after he won a landslide victory in this month's election. Saied's win delivered a heavy blow to a governing elite accused of failing to improve living standards or end corruption since the 2011 revolution that introduced democracy after years of authoritarian rule. Even with a large mandate, the new president has less direct control of policy than the Prime Minister, and both will quickly face a series of tough challenges, including high unemployment rates and fighting corruption. Tunisian president controls foreign and defense policy, governing alongside a Prime Minister chosen by Parliament who has authority over domestic affairs. Now, shortages of bread, fuel and medicine, as well as the high cost of commodities, sparked protests in Sudan, which led to the ouster of longtime President Omar al-Bashir in April. They sent the economy into turmoil. The new government took office 6 weeks ago. Sudan's Finance Minister Ibrahim El-Badawi recently sat down with VOA's Peter Clotty and talked about the challenges of reviving his country's economy.
The challenges are enormous. The task is arduous. And when we got into this as a government. We knew what we are, there is a lot cut for us, to do our job. But it's actually the spirit of the revolution, the spirit of these youth who have actually motivated us. I think the baggage that we now carry from the old regime, because it was basically a bunker mentality, predatory, authoritarian regime that ruled the country for 30 years and managed actually to destroy the capabilities of the institutions and to create problems for us, not only in terms of the hyperinflation and massive distortions in the macroeconomy and the inefficiencies in the sectoral, in the various sectors of the economy, but also the most devastating, actually, legacy of the past regime is to have the country listed as a state sponsoring terrorist country, which is still, unfortunately, despite all the efforts and the transformation and this great revolution, we continue to be living in the shadow of the state-sponsored terrorism act.
So how do you plan to combat that, and how will that affect your job to stabilize the macroeconomic conditions in Sudan?
Well, actually, because you need to demonetize the budget. You need to fund the budget because, believe it or not, the fiscal effort for a country like Sudan, which is the fiscal effort means the ratio of tax and other public revenues to the national product, to GDP, is actually about 6%, which is one of the lowest in the world. And the reason being because the old regime, the past regime, was running a parallel state, an official budget and another budget that is aimed at other objectives that has nothing to do with the welfare and development of the common Sudanese. So the first effort that we started was to enhance the revenue collection in order to empower the government with resources to deliver services in education and health, and also in order to attain the required credibility to go to donors, to friends of Sudan, to the partners of Sudan in the region, in the Arab region, as well as internationally, and to ask for help, because we cannot do it alone. After 30 years of systematic destruction, the needs are tremendous. A large number of our fellow citizens in Darfur, in southern Blue Nile and southern Darfur, they are displaced for a very long period. Their lives have been ravaged by conflicts. We need to resettle the IDPs, the internally displaced people. We need to give them livelihood support in agriculture, in other businesses. We need to deliver services to them. And in addition, of course, to the unemployment of youth, in addition, of course, to the high rising cost of living that we inherited from the old regime. We are working very hard, and in fact, my visit here is testimony to this.
That was Sudan's Finance Minister Ibrahim El-Badawi speaking to VOA's Peter Clotty right here in our Washington studios. Now, conflict has disrupted Libya's shrunken migrant smuggling and detention networks, and recent detention center closures mean migrants are leaving ports in taxis and after being intercepted by the EU-backed Coast Guard. Those still in detention face extreme abuse, including fatal shootings when they try to escape. For years, migrants sent back to Libya have been routinely transferred to government-affiliated detention centers, notorious for squalid conditions and abuse. Researchers and aid workers say the shift has made Libya even more brutal for migrants who remain, exposing them to increased levels of abuse and extortion by smugglers struggling to make money in a shrunken market. Libya has an estimated migrant population of 640,000. The centers house just 5,000, but turnover can be rapid. Now, $20 billion of African debt has been written off by Russia as part of an initiative to ease the debt burden on African countries. President Vladimir Putin made the announcement in Sochi on Wednesday while addressing dozens of African heads of state at the plenary session of the Russia-Africa Summit. Putin said Russia currently ranks as one of the top 10 largest suppliers of food to the African market, with exports amounting to $25 billion, with the potential for further growth. The first Russia-Africa Summit is part of a Kremlin drive to win businesses and restore influence in Africa following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, Russia dispatched 2 nuclear-capable bombers to South Africa on a training mission on Wednesday, in a flight that appeared timed to coincide with President Putin's opening of the Russia-Africa Summit. Now, rabbit meat is a slowly growing part of Africa's diet, and with an expanding industry in South Africa and Nigeria, a group of hardcore rabbit farmers are promoting the meat as cheap and healthy. And while rabbit meat is not commonly consumed in some parts of Africa, there is also a growing demand for the white meat in other countries, such as Europe. Critics, however, say they're reluctant to eat animals that are considered pets. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Johannesburg.
Africa, meat, the new white meat. African farmers are looking for a new solution for the continent's growing appetite for meat. The answer, they say, could lie here. In the past decade, South Africa's largest rabbit meat supplier has added nearly 150 rabbit farms to its stable. And breeders recently created a South African breed of rabbit, the Pendula, which translates to the answer. Independent farmer Gavin Gugurin keeps 500 rabbits at his farm outside Johannesburg. He says he thinks it's the meat of the future.
As National Council, we've been saying for the last 12 to 15 odd years that rabbit has the potential of being the savior of Africa from a protein point of view. The reasons behind that are a multitude.
For one, he says, rabbit meat is high in protein and low in fat and cholesterol. They take up little space and don't eat much. They require less water than chickens and put out less waste than cows. Rabbits, Gugurin says, may be the greenest meat.
There's a lot of negatives that are currently happening around carbon impact on the planet, specifically around feedlotting of animals on a large scale. We talk about cattle and beef that are put into feedlots. So you've got huge carbon footprints there. Rabbits' carbon footprint is minimal compared to the rest.
And finally, he says, they breed like, well, rabbits. But can they make the leap from pet to plate? Butchery manager Richard Letcher says he's noticed South Africans' appetite for meat is expanding to more unconventional options. His shop is one of the few in Johannesburg that stocks rabbit, but it's moving quite slowly.
What has changed within our environment over the last year is that there's been a lot more of a request for goat meat, which we haven't sold before.
He reasons that rabbit, which is still slow-moving, could see the same growth. But has he taken the bite? He cited the single biggest reason people give for not eating rabbit.
I haven't got my mind around eating my pet at this point, so no.
His colleague, meat cutter Mnalisi Smakade, says he's missing out. He loves rabbit meat, which brings us to the most important question of all.
Tastes like chicken, sort of chicken. It's not hard like the beef. It's very nice and soft.
As Africa's population is set to nearly double by the year 2050, food supply, especially protein, is a major concern. Could the humble rabbit fill that gap? And millions of stomachs? Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Ugandan-born Solomon Jagwe talks about the future of animation in Africa. We'll be right back.
Could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/African beat.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Women around the world are becoming more selective about their beauty products. They're demanding fewer potentially damaging chemicals and more natural products. In Morocco, natural beauty products now carry a premium, and more women are demanding them. This year, brands too are more aware of the quality of the ingredients. Many are well known, such as honey, argan oil, eucalyptus, rose, and anise. There's also interest in new technology for hair. Next up, real eggshells turned into miniature teapot sculptures and wall art. Down another walkway, wrenches, forks, and spoons turned into sculptures and centerpieces. Artists at the Beverly Hill Art Show are embracing found and recycled materials to create their works. The theme of this edition of the biannual event is dwelling. Organizers say dwelling is defined by the different styles we call home. And in other green news, eco-friendly and sustainable baby products are on trend this year. Everything from plastic-free wipes to more sustainable baby fashions are being sought out by environmentally aware parents at this year's baby show in London. Organic cottons and recycled materials are increasingly entering the baby market. Color palettes are chosen to be gender neutral, meaning the clothes can be handed down to a boy or girl. And that's what's trending today.
To other world news, U.S. Special Representative for Syria, James Jeffrey, says Turkey was determined to launch an offensive against Kurds in northern Syria, regardless of the presence of U.S. troops in the area. He told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee at a hearing Tuesday that some U.S. troops are still in Syria, working with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, and that the administration is working on making a temporary ceasefire permanent. U.S. lawmakers expressed concern about Iran, Russia, and Syrian government forces moving in to fill the void left by the withdrawal of U.S. troops. VOA's Lad Zahok has more.
Russian and Turkish leaders made a deal Tuesday to share control of Syria's border area that requires Kurdish fighters to clear the entire length of the Syria-Turkey border. The agreement does not include the areas already occupied by Turkish forces.
Both countries will adopt precautions against the leakage of terrorists, and a joint mechanism will be established for the observation of the compliance with the agreement.
Senator Bob Menendez, a Democrat from New Jersey, criticized the NATO ally for making a deal with Moscow.
If there was any doubt before, Erdogan's intentions are clear. An ethnic cleansing mission in northeastern Syria at the expense of broader regional stability, including the fight against ISIS, and of partnership and cooperation with the United States and other NATO allies.
At a hearing Tuesday, members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee accused U.S. President Donald Trump of leaving Syrian Kurds exposed to the Turkish attack. Ambassador Jeffrey insisted that Turkey had planned to invade, despite U.S. warnings not to do so.
We told Turkey what exactly would happen. They would not get very far in this offensive, and they have not gotten very far. As you see, they now are in ceasefire agreements with both us and the Russians, and we told them exactly how this would play out, that it made no sense to scramble the entire situation in northeast Syria in order to do something they could not attain.
The United Nations said the Turkish offensive in northern Syria has displaced more than 176,000 people and damaged much of the critical infrastructure. Even some of Trump's own party members have called on the administration to mitigate the damage done by the withdrawal of U.S. troops. But Republican Senator Rand Paul on Tuesday blocked for the second time a Senate vote on a resolution passed by the House of Representatives that formally opposes Trump's strategy in Syria. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said the resolution was too weak and introduced his own measure.
My own view is that this is a good time to go beyond just eastern Syria and also express ourselves on the inappropriateness of drawing down in Afghanistan, like President Obama did in Iraq, which clearly was a mistake and caused the rise of ISIS in that area.
The Trump administration says some U.S. troops are remaining in Syria to prevent the oil fields from falling into the hands of Islamic State and other terrorist groups. Zlarica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
And it's time for our tech segment, and joining us now is our technology reporter, Paul Ndiho. Paul?
Hello, Esther. Africa might not be the first place that comes to mind when you think about animation, but it soon might be. The animation industry has the potential to be self-sustaining, and there is a growing demand for locally produced content. Joining me in studio to talk about the future of animation in Africa is Solomon Jagwe, a Ugandan-born animator and founder of SOWL Studios based in the U.S. state of Virginia. Some of his hit animated short sci-fi movies and TV series have gone viral on the internet. Solomon, welcome to Africa 54.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me about your hit series.
So Nkoza and Nancha was born out of a need for me and my wife to share our cultural heritage with our children. They were born here, but I am born in Uganda, so I wanted to pass on to them the language Luganda and also the stories that we used to be told by my grandmother.
And how has been the reaction so far?
It's been actually great because it's not just helping me. I've heard from so many parents who have kids here in the diaspora struggling to teach them the Luganda language and other languages from Uganda. So it has been well received, and through the app, Nkoza Nancha app, which is available on iOS and Android, and it's being used actively by parents.
Earlier we were talking, and you talked about the possibility of expanding this beyond Uganda. You're looking at a product that can go across the continent. Yes. How big is the animation industry on the continent?
Right now, probably South Africa and maybe Nigeria and Kenya are the top markets right now. But more and more young people are joining the movement and trying to tell stories using animation.
You strike me as some guy, sometimes when I see you, I don't know what to make of you, but I've seen some of the sci-fi movies, short movies that you've made. Yes. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that.
So I am a big science fiction fan. I've always loved comic books. I've always loved movies like Avatar. And I grew up in a village in Masaka, in Bia, deep in the village. And my grandmother used to tell me stories, these African folk tales in Uganda. So those sparked the storyteller in me. And that's why I love movies like that. Yeah.
Is there any particular reason why you chose maybe to produce a sci-fi, or these science fiction movies?
So the science fiction movies that I've done have come out of just a desire to, I was reflecting on where the planet is right now and what humanity will be like if, for example, we have to go from Earth and find another home outside of that, yeah. But I wanted to put an African twist to it.
So who inspires you?
Right now, it's Tyler Perry. I'm just so proud of seeing a black man developing his own studio and actually hiring black people to tell black stories.
So that brings me back to the Nancha series. You've spent a lot of time doing this kind of stuff. What would you tell to a young person in Africa or anywhere in the world who is watching you and they want to be you?
So, one, be original. Be inspired by what you see, but try to tell your own story. Because in as much as we watch fairy tales from the West, it's very important for us as Africans to tell stories from Africa. And so take out of what you have in your mind, in your heart, and as your dream, and bring it to life either through a script or a sketch, and then try to do every single day, try to put something towards that dream.
Speaking of dreams, is there a way you can show us what is it that you've been working on, some of the things that you've been working on?
So I've created this app called The Adventures of Nkoza Nancha, which is featuring a character called Nancha and her brother Nkoza. And they're actually inspired by my two kids, Jasmine and Solomon. And my wife, I was homeschooling my kids for about 6 years, and my wife homeschooled before me. So we're trying to find a solution to help our kids learn Luganda. And many other parents had approached us, and they were showing us, that this is a desperate need. And so we came up with an app to be able to tell those stories through games, through the videos, and through the music itself. Yeah.
Interesting. So, as a content producer myself, I find sometimes it's very hard to sort of like market this type of content on the continent. So, what is it that you're doing differently to be able to get somebody to buy into what you're doing?
I think we've been blessed to live in this internet age, and we market our product through social media, through Facebook and Twitter, and we get a big percentage of the downloads from Uganda, but also from the UK, Canada, and the US as well. Yeah.
Is there a particular training that you have to do to really get to be good at this kind of stuff?
I tell you, there are people who have the technical skills to do it. I had to train myself to do this, and that's one thing that I encourage the young animators out there. Don't be afraid to venture into self-training, because if you have something that is dear to your heart, you're going to find a way to create it, and that's what I did. I taught myself how to create this app.
You also said that you're trying to convert some of these into Swahili, yes, a language that is commonly spoken across Africa.
Yes. So one of the languages that we are started with is Luganda, right, which is the most widely spoken language in Uganda right now. But most of the parents who are in the diaspora are also wanting those kids to learn Luganda. We want to be able to add Swahili and other African languages so that this content can be consumed by more than just people who speak English.
Well, Solomon, I'm happy to have had the opportunity to host you here. I look forward to maybe hosting you another time. That was Solomon Jagwe, a Ugandan-born animator, founder of SOWL Studios. That wraps up our tech segment today. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho each Wednesday for another tech segment right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.